Hello and welcome to my Penny Fox guide. Hopefully in this video I can teach you some tips and tricks and help you improve your ability to play as Penny Fox. Foxy is classified as an assassin, harasser, and pusher, although personally I would add brawler. Her movement speed is quite fast. She can easily outrun many other Nauts. Her jumping ability also makes her one of the best Nauts at dodging things. She has 3 jumps on base and 4 with boots. This gives her a lot of time for aerial maneuvering. She's very good at dodging things like Cocoa Balls, Sko's Earthquake, and Scoop's Hammer. Her auto attack is a piercing melee attack that damages people in an arc in front of her. The auto attack is used to collect charges. The charges is the bread and butter of how Foxy works. Her 2 other abilities are based upon these charges. One of her upgrades changes her auto attack into an energy blaster when you have full amount of charges. So instead of attacking melee, you have a ranged attack. Pounce is a fast dash that has a variable amount of damage based upon how many charges you have. Each charge that you have when you activate the ability adds more damage to the pounce, but it also uses up the charges. It's different than Froggy's dash in that it doesn't pierce things, and it's different than Vinny's because it's based upon what you hit and not just an AoE effect. It can still hit 2 or more people at once, but it still requires you to hit them. It displaces people in the direction you hit them, so it can be used to move enemies to weaker and more vulnerable positions. It also interrupts certain abilities. Ray's snipe can be cancelled if you hit her while she's charging up. You can also use the pounce to save low health teammates from a clunk explosion or any other incoming damage sources. Pounce can be used as an offensive, defensive weapon, or as an escape option, just dashing away. Energy Pulse is her second ability, and it's a piercing shot similar to Coco's Lightning Ball. It pierces through all terrain and all objects. It also does a variable amount of damage based upon how many charges you have, just like the Pounce. It damages whatever it touches and also applies an amplified damage debuff to whomever it hits for 3.5 seconds. This debuff causes them to take more damage when they get hit by other things. Managing charges is the most important thing you can do as Foxy. Make sure you take any opportunity you can to make sure you grab some extra charges. When you have no charges, you are essentially worthless as you can't use either of your abilities. Whenever you have a spare moment, attack the enemy droids or creep, or even solar bosses if you have a second. It should also be noted that whenever you're left alone with an enemy wave of droids, use your abilities on them. You have very fast cooldown on your abilities, and if you open up with a pounce or a dash and then continue auto-attacking them, you should clear the droids much faster and still maintain full charges. You can use just 2 health creep to completely recharge your charges if you attack them correctly, making sure you only hit 1 at a time. This may add a second or 2 to your health gathering trip, but topping off on charges is incredibly important. Foxy shines brightest when she's ganking or 1v1ing people. She has a massive amount of damage output and can unleash that damage quite fast and unexpectedly. Getting the jump on people can often lead to getting a kill. She helps a lot in teamfights, but definitely doesn't too well in 3v1s. She may be good at bursting people down, but she's still got relatively low amount of health and is weak to bursting as well. So when you're up against an entire team by yourself, you need to take precautions. She functions very well with a good finisher or as one. She can deal a lot of damage, and then a friendly Coco, Leon, or any other ally can finish them off, or vice versa. You can take advantage of her speed quite well. You can zip in, do damage, and then zip out quite fast, but don't get too greedy. Don't get too close to the enemy team or turrets. Getting out of position can hurt any Naut, and especially Foxy. She can transfer between lanes in seconds, so put that pressure on both turrets at the same time. Moving around can help you find opportunities, find enemies that are low health. Make sure to use your jump height to your advantage. On a Gillian, you can jump all the way up the middle pit and not have to go around the sides. On Sorona, you can get almost as high as the other flying Nauts and do damage to them and hit them out of the sky. You can also jump up to your jungle without having to use the jump pad. That's quite useful for recovering health and charges, or just getting up there if you see an enemy up there. In this video, I'll be showing you 2 different builds. One is more offensive and aggressive build, and the other is more defensive and conservative. The defensive build is my personal build that I use more often, and the other was made by Minic78. He inspired me to learn Foxy with the build that I'll show you later. Both are quite viable builds, and I'm presenting both to give you an option based upon how you like to play. I'll talk about my defensive build first. I say defensive, but I don't mean we're focusing on defense. I just prefer a more cautious approach, and I don't like taking risks and being in the thick of battles as much. But the other build greatly benefits from this. I like maintaining my health and making sure I don't take too many unnecessary risks. As with most of the builds I show, I like to build into survivability and not relying on teammates. I like to solo queue, and that's what this build is tailored to. This build works with mediocre teammates, but it shines with really good ones. Right out of the drop pod, I get Pounce and Pulse. If you know me at all, you know I like my boots, but hers cost a lot more and are not needed immediately because of her high speed and already having triple jump. As soon as I can, I get double regen because she needs some survivability early. She's squishy and needs a method of recovering health early because she's always at the front lines gathering charges, and dashing into people and otherwise taking lots of damage. Now at this point, the build can vary, as all builds should. You never want a rigid build because sometimes building differently in different situations can save your life. If I'm still taking a lot of damage, and often having low health, I buy Herring Snack Badge, which gives her health whenever she uses charges based on the number of charges she uses. If I'm having trouble dodging attacks, or I'm getting thrown around by a Sko, or tongued by a Leon, or there are mines I need to tiptoe around, I get boots. Also, I like to spritz in health upgrades whenever I feel like I'm taking a lot of burst damage. I don't have a predetermined time in which I buy them, I just put them in whenever I feel like I need a little bit more health. But if I'm feeling fine on all those accounts, I get Zurian Mechanic, which lets you keep one charge after successfully landing a Pounce. This may not sound like much, but it helps keep your charge meter full, and is extremely useful when you are getting pinned behind your own turrets and you're having trouble gathering charges. You should also get into the habit of auto-attacking right after a Pounce, so you can pick up charges, and a follow-up pulse is much more effective. That extra charge from Zurian Mechanic will help when you're brawling and there's nowhere near you can easily grab more charges. Again, I decide if I need boots or the Herring Badge, and if I don't, I continue on. The next upgrade I buy is Electric Bike Lock. I like initiating with Pounce, and so I like to get damage on this quite quickly. I rely on pouncing to do the majority of the damage, which is why I picked this up early. I initiate with a Pounce dealing 420 damage, hit a few times with auto attack, and then pulse for another 400 damage. That is a lot of damage in a short time. At this point, I pick up boots if I haven't already because the extra speed and jump help immensely. I then start to work on pulse. Depending on the game, I either go with Death Lens or Bug Jars. Bug Jars is a straight up damage upgrade to the pulse, but the Death Lens lets you shoot out an energy shot that does 150 damage. Bug Jar is useful if you can land your pulses on people, but Death Lens is useful against characters that are harder or dangerous to get close to, like Sko or Ayla. I finish off buying both of those upgrades, and at this point, if I haven't bought Herring Badge, I buy it. At this point, I've bought all the main upgrades that I really like to use, and you're quite the powerhouse of damage. You can deal a lot of damage to people very quickly. I then buy the Ninetales Badge because it's useful for chasing and escaping. I then buy the Sentient Rock because I find that silence late game can be quite effective against a lot of knots. I generally don't get this far in matches. I rarely get maxed out with Foxy. She's a snowball knot. When she gets on a roll, she's a monster and just eats enemy knots for breakfast. But Foxy's upgrades are fairly expensive, so I rarely get to max stage, because I either snowball into a fast victory or I get shut down and unable to buy many upgrades. But after that, I buy the Cookie Monster Badge, which adds damage to her auto attack, and then I buy Photovoltaic Lightning Charges. That is a mouthful, which decreases the cooldown on Pounce. A lot of people buy this upgrade much earlier, but I haven't really felt it was necessary enough to warrant spending the money earlier. And that is my build. This is what I am much more comfortable using and utilizing myself, as I feel it does the best for my type of play. And now I'll talk about the more offensive/aggressive build. Minnick made this build to take advantage of a combo that Foxy has. Heart-shaped net, which resets pulse cooldown when a 1 combo point pulse is used, is a perfect match with Death Lens, which gives 1 pulse point when actually hitting something. What this allows you to do is spam the 2 abilities to great effect, shooting out a damaging pulse and a deadly energy shot almost every second. He picks up Herring Snack Badge very early as well because it combos with this also. Not only is he pulsing and shooting the energy ball, every pulse gains him a little bit of health, allowing him to stay in the fight longer. This combo allows for impressive displays, but relies on you continuously being able to hit your pulse and Death Lens shot. It is a lot more aggressive, but it works quite often and effectively. This build is what I started out on, and as much as I like it, I still prefer my conservative build. It's more reliable, for me at least, and it doesn't rely on taking risky opportunities. It also relies heavily on hitting your skill shots, so if you don't think you can reliably do that, you might want to stick to my more conservative build, but I recommend you give this a try anyway. See if you can actually hit them. When I first saw Minnick's videos, I thought that was one tough skill shot that I would never be able to get in a million years, but it's not quite as hard as it looks. It's a little difficult, but it's not impossible to learn. I quickly learned how to use it effectively within a couple of games, and I heartily recommend you give it a shot. A couple of quick tips. You can use your pounce while pushing a turret to push the droids back to give you a little bit more time to hammer on that turret. When you've just respawned, you can use your pounce ability while still inside the barrier without it costing any charges. When you're killing a solar boss, make sure to not use one of your skills or abilities to finish it off. It does heal you completely, but it will not refill your charges. Penny's pounce also interrupts Froggy's tornado. So that has been my Penny Fox guide. She is currently a very powerful Naut, and I'm hoping the nerf hammer treats her gently in future patches. Hopefully this has helped you learn and become a better Foxy player. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.